Hello, and we are back at the DMV once again, this time in a different spot out in McLean or Tysons. So, if there is horrible urbanism, we will find out today about it. But it is right, international break, so no time pressure. The haircut place doesn't open for a while, so why not? Never been out to this wonder of mixed use urban development out here, so why not? As a quick side note, hopefully this way I won't need to desperately piss myself and my phone won't die, so we can have a bit more time to talk about random things. And one of those random things is started watching the first episode of The Great on Hulu, which is conceptually just it uses Catherine the Great in Imperial Russia, but it's really just a metaphor, frankly, it seems, for this lack of women's autonomy, if you really break it down, which is fine. But which is a bit quiche. But it's of course so Elle Fanning is the actress, or the lead actress. Like, I don't know, call it male gaze or whatever, but works pretty well. I say I started watching. I've only seen one episode, but but it does connect. Of course, the issue with that and the male gaze part is that normally when you watch a show, you can kind of get away with not really watching it, just listen to it, because why not? But the issue with The Great, and this gets to the male gaze part, is that Elle Fanning, like, I don't know, like, certainly in the show at least. Maybe it's the corset, probably. But it looks very good. Yeah. It's like, again, I don't know. It's a great retention mechanism to stick with it, which is nice. Can't say, frankly, not every show can say that. So therefore, there's a logic to the male gaze, evidently. Yeah. Just bluntly honest about that. But it is true. But yeah, I don't know, like, genuinely, like, yeah, like, can't say there's much news to the show, forcing that many non Russian passing actors into it. Like, what it's doing. So you can take. But it is a bit jarring. And can't say overly reactive. Now, one of these buildings is the Capital One HQ/office. And as the shareholder of 1.4 shares at this point, of Capital One. Right, you bought one share in the 90s, right? Because it's a bank, or is it more of a credit card thing? Not really sure. And then, of course, right, you just take your dividends out or reinvest them. And then, of course, you've got the good old Discover merger, which actually is pretty good if you think of, okay, this is the Capital One building right here, which is actually pretty good if you think about it, right? Because it gives them an entire payments rail, which not everybody can say they've got, right? So it is value additive. So okay, so we started out by just so we started by being slightly horny about down badish for Fannie. Right, here's Capital One. You see the hair glistening in the wind. But yeah, so I do suppose if you think about like the jokes of cities that are basically like a company's fiefdom, I do suppose Tysons Corner is Capital One's domain. Which is funny though, because presumably, like, what would be the most benevolent corporate overlord, right? Would it be a financial institution? Would it be an industrial company? It's like, well, you kind of have the precedent of industrial companies, right? With the company towns back in the early Industrial Revolution, of those places not being that nice, right? With like the company store and stuff like that. So we kind of have a base case for what, for an industrial not being a good corporate residential overlord. Can't say that disproves the benevolence of a financial institution, but when your CEO has the name Fairbank and he runs a bank, kind of writes itself, right? And there's the Capital One in the background, right? The nice tasteful curve. And today, rocking the Milan 1415 once again. Classic, tasteful shirt. But yeah, I've never been out to this part of Virginia. So just right on Google Maps or Google Photos, you can kind of see a heat map of where you've been. Just wanted to fill in the gaps. It's a bit windy, so maybe you haven't heard anything. I know you probably heard the important part and the most interesting statement about Elle Fanning. The funny part is, so apparently she dated the guy who was in The Social Network, but not Arnie Hammer or any of the Winklevoss, or it is only one Winklevoss, right? Because it's just Arnie Hammer. Apparently she wasn't dating those guys, but she was dating the Syrian guy. I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. But of course they broke up, and that's kind of, it is the classic like loser thing to say. We're like, I couldn't imagine ever breaking up with her like that, bro. Because that just kind of shows that you're putting yourself at a different pedestal or lower pedestal fundamentally, and that you don't appreciate how relationships work. But setting that aside, it is like, I don't know, it was like a 6-year thing according to Wikipedia. So bizarre. It is a fun thought experiment if you're a guy and you see another guy who's with a girl who's out of his league, should you be annoyed at that? Because presumably that guy took one of the handful of girls who's willing to date below? Or should you be happy because it's a sign that, or should you be happy because it's a sign that the women are willing to date below their true level, I don't know. Yeah, Capital One. That's it. So this is where I'm not sure where you would rank Capital One in terms of employer size into the DMV. But back on, should you be happy or sad as a guy when you see that? I'd probably come on the side of you shouldn't be annoyed at the very least, right? Yeah, because nothing tells you that she was gonna ever look at you or date you, right? So therefore, there's no reason to be annoyed about something that may or may never happen. Anyways. Yeah. Alright, so we'll bounce around now. So no prediction market stuff today. Instead, we'll just talk about vague dating and financial things. And so literally, Richard Fairbanks is the founder and CEO of Capital One. And his name is Fairbanks. So if, again, like, normative determinism, right? Where you can argue that your name affects or has some impact on what you end up doing. It's like, I don't know, Richard Fairbanks, that kind of hits you on the nose, right? For what you would think fits the bill. Probably. Can't say any other CEOs really come to mind as being so blunt on the nose. Certainly not in banking, right? Moynihan of B of A, not really. Diamond, not really. I suppose if you want to make JP Morgan a meme stock, you could say Jamie Diamond Hands. Kind of contrived though. It would be funny if you did turn a bank into a meme stock. You gotta conceptually, what could a bank do with it? Right, GameStop, AMC, very aggressive about monetizing the attention into equity issuances. But you can't really do that. Or you can do it for bank stock, but like, I perceive there to be much. I can't remember a bank doing like an at the market offering. I remember seeing banks do placements, right? Like, rest in peace, that Saudi investment into Credit Suisse. Horrible timing for Michael Klein, if you think about it. Yeah, like, genuinely very tough timing. And then he got dragged in front of Congress to testify about live golf. And it's like, it's tough. I don't know, it's strange though, because it's not like, well, so you don't perceive there to be much ulterior stuff with that. It really does seem just like a commercial exercise. It's not like Mubadala. Mubadala is psyoping Americans by doing a private credit JV with Goldman Sachs or whatever. Although, if private credit is that important, then maybe they're onto something. Now, last night I did spend some time, so I finished watching an episode of The Great. It's like, yeah, kind of feel like a loser now, ain't I? Okay, so how to not make myself feel like a loser? Let's look at a BDC's 10K, and let's look at some of the line item loans they made. Which, again, is very, very schmuck behavior. But again, right, because the BDCs, so I looked at Ares BDC, ARCC, which is frankly, consensus is that it's one of the higher quality BDCs. I would put Sixth Street's BDC up there. Maybe Golub, you can toss in. GBDC, right? Very original names. But yeah, so it's very easy, like, again, because public. So some will disclose it in a 10Q, some are only 10K. But they will disclose, like, the loans they make to who, right? And that's why you get those cookie cutter news articles about Blackstone investing in something, even though it's just a credit investment, which is kind of different, or it is, very much so different. It is funny though when you see a brand, for example, like you can see that there's a media company, I believe the one that owns Coco Melon, and it has private credit. Yeah, it's like, man, the parent company, or maybe not Coco Melon, but there is some, I think it's the Blackstone with the former John Mayer, the former TikTok CEO, and then somebody else, John Mayer and the next Disney guy, and they have a media company, and it is, I know I've seen it in some 10K, the private credit loans they've made. Okay. I was gonna have a more ambitious plan, but I was gonna make a loop through Tysons and walk down to Denning to finish at the red line. But I kind of need to piss myself at some point. So maybe Tyson's Corner will be open. We can sneak into the mall and take a much-deserved piss. But because this is a decently long subway ride. But yeah, but it's fun, right? So there's a children's media company, right? And you can see the private credit loans backing it up. And it's, these guys are paying plus 450 or something like that. Yeah, I know that it's private credit backed because I've seen it before. I thought it was amusing. But, right, you could do that. So there's not really a lot you can do. Like the actual exercise you can do with BDCs, right? And frankly, you can chat GPT it and save yourself the time. It's just, how much do they distribute in dividends? How much do they earn? And what are earnings if you exclude PIK? Right? We have real earnings or real cash payments. And that can get you effectively, like, how much of the earnings are sustainable versus not. And conceptually, even if they're paying you 100% in actual earnings, right? That doesn't mean that there won't be future stress from the borrowers who they lend to. Which means, frankly, like, you want, like 150% or whatever, right? Here's a fun thing. Gannett, that's a publicly traded company, right? One of those not telecom, but like TV station operator stubs. Same with Tegna, TGNA, Gannett's public. Of course, you would expect them to not be doing amazing, but they haven't. The companies haven't died. Which, again, it's like the same way people talk about baby boomer wealth transfer, and it's like, sure, at some point it's going to happen. Hasn't happened yet, you know. So, and same with these TV stations, right? Like the end of cable. Yeah, it's not going to get better, but I do suppose that the short lesson is things take longer or happen faster, but they never happen on that median time scale that you would expect. How's that for some folk investing wisdom right there? Yeah. I will say this actually, you know, this part of Tysons, at least, this isn't the mall, so I suppose this is unfair. But this actually isn't that bad of a walk. Like, sure, the road's bigger, or it's not pedestrian friendly, but you've got plenty of trees, so you actually got cover, and it does provide a sense of protection from cars. So this is actually, for being honest, again, not that I'm the master of urbanism by any means, nor should I, with my tasteless self that just perpetuates the male gaze. Again, I don't know. It is funny. Okay, so we're just gonna bounce back and forth on sophisticated stuff, and then not sophisticated stuff. But of course, I think, was it this year? At the Met Gala, Elle Fanning had that. She blew up on Twitter because of her outfit, and like certain pictures of her. It's like, yeah. Of course, the joke is, right, you can. The Twitter joke is just take a deep breath and sigh. It's like, yeah. Not much you can do about it, you know. All you can say is like, that Syrian guy that she dated, what a dumbass. But I will say the funny part is, though, in the grape, like, I think it makes sense for everybody to have a British accent. Just like in Chernobyl, that's much better than forcing everyone to mimic some Russian accent. But I think she's actually from like a very not overwhelming part of the US. So it's like her actual voice is very, very different, which is charming, no doubt, but it is different. And so that's just a funny juxtaposition. So Freddie Mac has this office nearby. We'll see if we walk by it. Of course, it seems that it's going to go public at some point. Okay. We are going to full send for a McDonald's. That is the plan. Yeah, dude. Yeah, because it's 8:10, so most places aren't open. So we are gonna full send for a Mickey D's. Do I have any deals at the moment? It's gonna be breakfast menu. Very annoying. But yeah, McDonald's is my again, right. I haven't mentioned Chris Arnott in a while. But Chris Arnott has the idea, right, that McDonald's are actually like, it is frankly a huge critique of governance. Well, somehow McDonald's or it's a huge criticism and damning indictment of American civic life. But McDonald's are actually like the real community centers in so many communities, just because of the lack of relative development in other places. So now it's a place where like they can't really kick you out, so it actually is like a community center. So I think he said he spoke to McDonald's corporate about that observation. Freddie Mac, man, what a place. So when these boys, Freddie Mac Center, it is that important, isn't it? Freddie Mac. So when Freddie Mac goes public, we can easily go and complain. We can complain about the 10% equity stub that is actually going to be sold to the public. Well, that's fair, you know. If the government's taking stakes and everything else, why not? Why not have something else? You know. Yeah, some people are very critical of the government taking stakes in Intel and all of that. But for me, it's like, I don't know. Like, you probably, when you bailed out the airlines, you probably could have taken warrants or something. You know. It's the same deal here. But yeah. But this is what keeps this nice realist architecture is what keeps your mortgage at 5%, whatever percent. It is actually a joke in finance. It's a joke in finance that the entire world's financial system depends on the mortgages of like 40-year-old Americans. Is what the global financial system depends on, just given, right? Like Patrick McKenzie's made a point. I am butchering it, but the way he wrote about it, like, it makes sense, like, genuinely does, about how mortgages, U.S. mortgages, are a really important part of the global financial system. Which is, and so I'm forgetting the details, but the funny observation was, like, when you think about like what an asset-backed security is, right? It's like, that's kind of what it is, you know, stuff like this, right? Or like your credit card bill is probably potentially part of an asset-backed security somewhere along the line, you know, which is nice to think about. Yeah, I don't really have much of a desire to go into the mall at Tysons. Yeah, 'cause that should literally just be parking lots. So not much value to be had by doing that, right? Yeah, probably not. Right. But yeah, but literally like I think it's because of how big like mortgages are in terms of financial assets that are associated with them. And so naturally it takes on a gravity of its own. But yeah, the same way like your credit card bill is probably part of some asset-backed security, or your auto loan definitely is part of an asset-backed security somewhere along the way. So you as a regular person can do your part in helping triple B securities continue to help triple B securities print money. Yeah, sounds like a fair deal in the social contracts. Okay. Yeah. So my original plan was definitely way too ambitious. So we will quickly pivot. And just walk around Tysons, which is not a bad thing. Again, yeah, I am strangely charmed by it. I'm actually, part of me thought I could have another Freddie Mac. This just became a Freddie Mac adventure somehow. Less impressive architecture, I will say, but yeah, definitely less impressive than the other building, but it does show how big. Again, right, just symbolic of how big like mortgages are. Right. Right. Classic loan stuff. You can see the Freddie Mac office. So I guess this is like the actual HQ. And the other places aren't the HQ per se. But again, it is funny for this place to be yeah, literally. If mortgage-backed securities are like the crux of much of the financial system, it is nice for it to be nestled in this sleepy part of Tysons in Virginia. It's like you have the worst of like data centers which fuel incredible excess in one part, and then you have okay, can't keep my train of thought. Let's yeah, not sure how. Do I want to? We have a choice. Yeah, we'll go this way. The bladder. Look at that. That's a literal fox. Oh gosh, gimbal. My camera literally just died, but it is a fox. Definitely crossing the street. That's nice. Yep. So so I do suppose if I made a comment that I view Georgetown as spiritually evil and like the physical embodiment of the caricature of DC, and the people that ruined other countries and millions of lives without any consequences. Well, I certainly think Tyson or Northern Virginia physically embodies not that, but like the excesses, right? Like Data Center Alley, or it's just, I think it makes sense. I'm sure there's a lot of NIMBYism about data centers, but I do agree that if the data center is right next to your house, it is a pretty miserable experience. I would agree, and I don't think that's quite great if you think about it. But the free market and zoning municipalities act as they will. We are but cogs in the machine. Gimbal protection. Huh. Kind of need the gimbal though, or else how would my camera work? Okay, I think I fixed it. Not really. Okay, I think we fixed it. Slightly. No, not really. Okay, that was an annoying pause for the camera work. Again, right, the medium of vlogging. There's nuances to it, yeah. So. Okay. It'd be nice, like JP Morgan's building like a full neighborhood around its 270 HQ. It'd be hilarious if like Capital One did something like that. This is like vaguely, like China style high rises. There was a fun article in Works in Progress, which is a nice okay, give me excuse my pause. But Works in Progress, which is a very nice, not blog, but it's they write interesting things. And they had one about how zoning differs in the US versus other places, or how like US zoning is different from zoning in China, right? And they talk about floor plan size, and like that's something like it explains the environment that you see, in photos, but you would never really think why, right? It's like you don't really think about zoning in your everyday life, and the average person doesn't think about zoning unless they follow like YIMBYism or NIMBYism, right? So it is actually like a fairly bespoke thing or topic. So it is nice when you can talk about it. Okay, we're gonna furiously walk to Mickey D's because I'm not gonna. Maybe buy a smoothie, reward myself. I did have a bit too much to eat at a little event yesterday, but as much as I like my cooking, it can get a bit tiresome. Look at that. Fairfax PD. Hey, look. Lucky Strike. That's it was private equity owned. But now it's public. I'm not sure if the PE owner is still the control shareholder. I'm not sure if they're the control owner still or not. There was a nice Bloomberg article about, you know, how bowling alleys are have literally all been rolled up into Lucky Strike. It's like, well, I'll let you tell me if that's good or bad. Right, because I don't articulate opinions on this show, as we know. Okay. But again, I am pleasantly struck. Maybe it's because it's not that busy, so there's fewer cars. Right, because cars are loud, not really friendly for the built environment. Pedestrians. Lucid van. I had to do a stock pitch on them for ESG class or impact investing class. And frankly, I do think the idea was there, where you know it's not going to go bust because the Saudis, the PIF has put so much into it, so it can't go bust. But I do suppose the investors